Welcome. My name is Kevin, and this is the Bible Artist Podcast. David Amito is my guest today. You probably know him best if you're on this podcast for his role as John the Baptist in The Chosen, but he's appeared in a variety of other films and shows. He's also a writer and producer. David, before we dig into The Chosen specifically, love to hear what got you interested in acting and film, just more generally.
Acting was the one thing that I think from the beginning was something that I was always drawn to. My parents were both in sciences. They're both doctors, so they lamented hearing every word of that. And so I actually studied in post-secondary. I studied biology. I have a degree in biology. But it just did not take, and I was just too drawn to the arts. I was in a band, and a friend of mine cast me in their short film. And then it hit me like, wow, this feels more right than any sort of, a dissection of a cat or frog or all these things they had me do. I think I had like worm juice once in my mouth, and then I was just like, that's it. This is done. I'm finished. And I went to the arts, and I was just so drawn to it that I eventually went to New York and studied in New York for 2 years, and that was just everything about that whole thing felt great and felt right. And then once I'm actually in the workforce, I'm like, oh my God, this is so hard. This is ridiculous. This is the craziest field I ever chose. But I stuck with it, and I've been fortunate to find people to create work with. I've been fortunate enough to have ideas to create of my own, and also to have been cast in projects like The Chosen, which was such a, I mean, pardon the pun, but a godsend at the time. You know what I mean? It just came at the perfect time, and it has really done a lot to keep me in the arts, to keep me solvent, and it's been great. So yeah, it's a weird path, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you kind of came into it circuitously a little bit. I mean, we'll get to The Chosen, but so I was looking at your, some of the other films that you've worked on, and, this podcast, it's focused mostly on like Bible adaptations and that kind of thing. But I have a personal interest as kind of a fledgling screenwriter in like horror and suspense, thriller, dark comedy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and I saw
right.
that you've worked in several projects in that kind of space.
Yeah, that horror dark comedy I have an attraction to that from the beginning. And the horror film that we did, it got me in a little bit of trouble with some of the fans of The Chosen. Most people were chill with it, but the occasional person, it basically this controversy blew up where it was purported that I had made a satanic horror film, and that now a Satanist was working on The Chosen. And I'm not a Satanist. This was a horror film, and what it was designed to kind of break the fourth wall. We were trying to be innovative that way, so we purported that the film itself was cursed with some demon, and it wasn't actually cursed. It was a total fabrication. We said the film was made in the 1970s. We shot it in 2014. We made it look like it was shot in the 1970s. And the whole idea was that, I don't know if you've ever seen The Ring. Yeah. So it's like you're watching the movie in The Ring. Like that was the movie.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to give the people the experience of like, oh my God, am I watching something that could be dangerous? And I was like curious to see how the horror would play if a lot of the horror was in people's imaginations. You put a seed in their mind of like, I don't think this film is cursed, but now I have this, I don't know. So it was very much like an experimental horror film. Of course, we never told anyone that because we would never get distribution. Experimental. Word of advice, if you want to destroy all chances of distributing a film, use experimental as the selling point. But we put it out there, and and it went viral in
Hmm.
2020. Um, it went viral in 2020, and we had something like 100 million like views on TikTok, which led to
Wow.
us like trending #1 on Amazon Prime.
Huh.
Um, a, a movie that was shot for a total budget of $19,000 with
Oh,
just three
wow.
schmucks in the woods, you know? So it was very much that idea, and people were kind of compelled to like, oh my gosh, like, have you heard about this movie? Let's turn it
Hmm.
into and then it turned into this like hashtag Antrum challenge. And so it
Hmm.
became a conversation thing. And we were so excited about it. And when the following year, so I had shot the movie and released it, but it hadn't been released before I started shooting season 1, and nothing really
Oh.
happened. And then I shot season 2 with the you know the yes the that's
Yeah.
that one and
Yeah. Yeah.
the conversation with Jesus,
Yeah.
and which was one of my favorite scenes that I've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
shot. But I'm sure we'll get into it. But um, yeah, that it got me a lot of attention, and people came to my Instagram page, and that's when uh, again, pardon the pun, all hell broke loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where people were like, "Oh my gosh, he made a horror film,"
Hmm.
and most people, the discourse was a lot more like, "This is a movie. This is just,
Hmm.
he's doing the thing. He's just a screenwriter. He's just an artist. This is what he does."
Yeah.
But there's a small minority of fans that saw it more literally, I
Yeah.
guess, and as a result, I think Dallas got some emails. There was a
Hmm.
brief moment where I was like the center of controversy. I mean, since then, I think other things have
Hmm.
come along that were
Yeah.
bigger, which is inevitable when a show gets this big, and it
Yeah.
also deals with such sensitive material where people are
Yeah.
very attached to it and
Hmm.
attached to the interpretation of it, and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
don't like all the creative liberties that the show might be taking. But yeah, so that's that story.
Yeah.
And
No, it's cool.
yeah,
I just enjoyed like kind of seeing that connection of like I've also kind of come across people where they're like you're into like Bible films and horror films, like those don't seem to go together, but like you,
right.
I can kind of see the value of both, and yeah, I was just curious about
Yeah.
that.
The funny thing is that both like Bible films and horror films come with preconceptions about who the audience is like.
Yeah.
And after making the horror film and going out and going to the festival circuit, you realize that
Mm,
horror people are actually like the most gentlest, like kindest people you can imagine. They're really
mm,
sweet. They might dress a little hardcore, but
mm,
really they're really, really kind and kind of shy often. And like
mm,
it's quite touching. And then the same thing with like the faith-based thing, me not coming from that world and coming into it. There's all sorts of preconceptions
mm,
that you tend to have, and I was just so beautifully blown away about how touching the community is,
mm,
because I think we tend to create these preconceptions from what we see on the media, which are
yeah,
usually the most extreme versions of nuts, because that's what gets the people clicks and whatever.
yeah,
So every group is like kind of crazy on the internet. And then every group in person
yeah,
is like really just a human being. And like,
mm,
I love that I'm a part of both these worlds. And I
mm,
love kind of being humbled into, um, you know, destroying any preconceptions I have, and encourage kind of an encouragement to not have them
mm,
for moving into the future, and with different communities that I might encounter, because it's really not, yeah, it's really, I don't know, once you walk it, you start to realize, wow, like it's quite surprising and touching
mm.
how people are, so I'm happy to be a part of those communities, and I hope to stay in both of those communities for, as long as they'll have me.
Yeah, that feels like just it kind of or aligns with just some of the messaging of The Chosen, or just the importance of kind of being open-minded and open-hearted towards people who are often excluded or pushed to the margins. So that's really cool
Totally.
that
Yeah,
you've kind of
I
had that
love that.
experience.
I love the voice of The Chosen. Um I love how open they are. And
Mm,
I've I or anybody around me has never been like criticized for anything that I do, you know?
mm,
I mean, we all treat each other with such enormous respect for one another and
mm,
respect the art that we do with, and it's such a creative like environment creatively, which I'm not sure everyone, I mean, nobody knows really necessarily what's happening behind the scenes in the
mm,
creation of the show, but it is like one of the kindest sets I've ever been on
mm.
and one of the most creative. Like
Huh.
it's so like, let's see what you can bring. Let's see what you're going to bring. Okay.
Mm,
And this direction is good, but let's try to move it in this direction. It's
mm,
collaborative. And there's some crews I've been to, there's some disgruntled members.
mm,
I for some reason tend to encounter them. Maybe
mhm.
it's like this guy or that guy, someone who just is kind of sick and tired of the
Yeah.
whole thing. And I've never encountered anyone like that on the set of The
Mm,
Chosen. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone is
mm,
excited about being there, and that like enthusiasm is infectious. And um, we're really excited to go and work on that set. So
huh.
yeah, there's a lot of
That's really
magic
cool.
happening there. Hmm.
Okay, so yeah, let's shift and talk a little more on The Chosen. Actually,
Sure.
I'll kind of bridge it a little bit. In The Chosen, your character John the Baptist, I've noticed like sometimes he gets called, I think it's Creepy John or Crazy
Hmm.
John, something like that. I
Yeah.
almost wonder whether some of the, I don't know, the energy or the sensibility that you've picked up in doing some horror films and stuff like that, if that comes out at all in your portrayal of John, just like kind of the uh, I don't know, something about kind of his demeanor or his
Mm.
how he can just come across as not not a tame lion or something. I don't know.
Right. No, I think that's just me. It's
Mm.
unfortunate, it's not the horror element. It's just
Yeah.
the natural creep that I might have. But a lot of it is just kind of surrendering to the material that like
Mm.
Dallas and Ryan and Tyler have written. And of course, there's a bit of like research on like just what I could find about John the Baptist going into it, but
Mm.
I wasn't given much other than the script and left to my own like to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how it would be best played. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, like you have an idea about how it would be best played, and then you go on set and you're like, oh, that idea doesn't really work. You
Mm.
gotta adapt to it. So I do have to say, I don't. I think it had a lot to do with just surrendering to the experience and
Mm.
surrendering to the script and
Mm.
trusting it and being like, I trust that this will work together in the
Mm-hmm.
narrative, and I trust that Dallas will tell me when I'm like going off the deep end.
Mm.
And sometimes he would like be like, "All right, let's try more this and not that,"
Mm.
and that's you depend on that
Mm-hmm.
from a director, and it's kind of where you get a lot of trust, being like, "Okay, cool, I'll just go wild, and
Mm.
he'll rein it in if it's wild in the wrong direction." And I do like going in the wrong direction because it helps you go in the right direction.
Yeah, it's part of the creative process, like trying different
Hmm.
things, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Jalis is so in touch with the creative process. He's
Mm.
like, it's not like my vision, let's see it. It's kind of like let's work now. We're a collaboration. And
Mm.
I've worked with some directors too that had a very specific thing in mind, result wise,
Mm.
and it really it starts to lose a bit of the life. It's like, okay, you imagined it like this, but
Yep.
I am not that.
Mm.
I am this, and
Mm.
this is what's happening today, and this is what's happening on
Mm.
set and with the other actor, and this is like, and so if we want it to be like real and natural, we got to kind of
Mm.
just accept what's happening. And this right in the middle of one of the kind of a pretty intense scene on season one
Mm-hmm.
was this thunderstorm. So this thunderstorm hit, and I was also not feeling well to begin with. This was pre-COVID days, so
Mm-hmm.
you can be sick and work,
Yeah.
but back in those days. So I was there, and the thunderstorm came, and they kept us in this like chilled place, and they have to shut down the set when a thunderstorm comes because of all the electric components, that there could be some kind of I don't know, someone can get fried. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we stopped, and I really was like and I kind of stopped the energy, and then I was like talking to Eric Avari
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, and we were just
Mm-hmm.
kind of, but I was like just in this crazy place that was as a result of like just, the heavens deciding to have this thunderstorm. And then we went and shot the scene, and that for sure affected
Mm-hmm.
um like how the performance comes out. Like you can't really control it. And I think it helped in that case, because it was really an intense moment. I was feeling a lot of intense things from the thunderstorm and the illness and all the things. So yeah, it's
Yeah. So that's the jail scene, right, where Nicodemus is visiting. Yeah, no,
yeah, exactly.
I could see how, he's kind of in like this really intense state of mind. So I could see how that fits well with what you were experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned a little bit ago, like doing a little research. Were there any things that you came across that you did find like helpful or just like insightful, or for you was most of the insight kind of just in the script itself?
Um, So some of the research is biblical, and other research is like, there's a lot of writings in
Yeah.
Josephus about John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So there takes on which has a different, like where he fits into Christian
Mm-hmm.
kind of canon is a bit different from how Josephus kind of wrote about John the Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And I was my mom is Buddhist. She comes from Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to both a Jewish school
Mm-hmm.
growing up, a Jewish elementary school. So we
Mm-hmm.
studied the Torah, all five books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew them at one time.
Mm.
And then Buddhism, which kind of encouraged me, and they're both in the sciences.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine how there's all sorts of like thoughts kind of
Yeah.
rattle around in my brain. And the comparison that came to me was the aesthetics in India
Mm-hmm.
about John the Baptist very much seemed like a Lao Tzu kind of
Mm-hmm.
character, where he like kind of goes and he lives, on his own and stuff like that, but a bit different. He's also very much engaged with I guess you could say the politics of the
Yeah.
time, in terms of like criticizing when someone professes to be, Jewish, and yet is a king, and now is doing things that are against the Bible. He's not gonna keep quiet and stay on a mountaintop. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like a bit of different. So these things kind of just started percolating, but also his locusts and honey and these kind of like uh my entry points to those was a lot of my own tendencies to maybe be a bit obsessive.
Mm.
And I think he is I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but singularly focused.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so I used my own entry point to like get to there. And I said this countless times, I am definitely not John the Baptist, and there's some parts of him that I really admire,
Mm.
um his sense of purpose,
Mm.
his sense of purpose over his own mortality.
Mm.
And yet I how I really related to him, especially with his humor, is that there must have been, at least in the interpretation, that Dallas, Tyler, and Ryan did, that a zest and a passion for life itself.
Hmm.
So I liked those two things. It's not just about dying for what
Hmm.
he believes in. It doesn't want to die, but he's
Hmm.
willing to. He wants to live, and I think
Hmm.
that that's even evident in the cell. But also, it's not just wants to live. There is another life for him on the other side. So, but I do think it is the end of this one. At least that's
Hmm.
how I saw it. So I definitely didn't want to approach it like a superhero going to the end. I wanted it to be very more human.
Hmm.
And
Like
I
vulnerable.
think yeah, because he's not Jesus, he's not God. He is a human being. And
Hmm.
that's one thing that I wanted from I saw it that way from the beginning. He's a human being, and so there should be no qualms
Hmm.
of how he approaches it. And so to be a human being and to have this singular focus for me is a little superhuman, because me,
Hmm.
I'm like kind of like a crazy artist, kind of scattered all over the place, sometimes. So yeah, it was a beautiful experience playing him.
Hmm. But
The
that's cool
problem
that.
with a lot of these interviews, just so you know, is that like I will hear a question and then start talking and then keep talking long enough that I forgot the initial question. So
No,
just
you had
beware.
some really interesting thoughts there. Like I really enjoyed it. I don't, the question isn't the important thing. It's what you have to say and your thoughts.
Oh,
So
good. Okay.
yeah,
Right on.
yeah. Thanks, David. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's interesting in The Chosen, the kind of relationship that John has with Jesus, and how there are some ways, like you were pointing out, where they are similar, but there's also some of the strong distinctions between them, both in kind of their maybe their attitude or their demeanor toward other people. Um, yeah, how would you kind of describe your understanding of like how John and Jesus kind of have different approaches or different personalities? I felt the scene you mentioned in season 2 where you guys had that conversation together. I feel like that really kind of highlighted some of those, like the unity in purpose, but also, you know, uh, they are different people.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the way I see it, and especially from that scene on the water there, um, that John is much more impulsive.
Mm.
Like it's just he's very much like you know reactive. He's like, oh, I see the disciples come. I'm gonna go and hide, and I'm gonna scare them. You know what I mean? He's like, it's just like it's very much he's driven that way, and I think Jesus is a lot more like a king.
Mm.
Like a wise king. You take your time, you deliberate, you find the right moment. You're not going to rush like just headstrong into it. And I think Jesus is even aware
Mm.
that that is going to cost um, John the Baptist
Mm.
that trait. And that difference between them is Jesus waits for the right time, and John is like, "Hey," and then react. So that's how I see the difference in this thing. And he even says to him, "Like, look, I'm impatient for you
Mm.
to get to work." That was a very like um that line really gave me a clue on a few of these
Mm.
things. He's just like, let's go. And I mean, in a way, everyone watching the show is kind of like also has that sentiment, right? They want to get to those parts.
Mm.
Um, but I believe it comes in part from his like, yeah, well, you are that, so let's see it. Let's go. Let's do it.
Mm.
Let's bring the kingdom of heaven on earth. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. A- And that I can see how that's going to probably, going to season 4. I don't think it's like giving anything away because, it's in the Bible and it's kind of pretty broadcast in the trailers that, you know, John's days are kind of numbered. We
Yeah.
we see a lot of hints at what's coming in season 4 in those trailers. So I imagine that as John is kind of approaching some of the the consequences of the actions that he's taken, and the end, that he's going to have to face. I'm just going to be interested to see how that how he kind of deals with that, like knowing that his cousin, Jesus, the Messiah, in theory, like could help him out, but has kind of this plan and this other approach that means he's not going to be maybe saved from death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel like, as you were kind of thinking through what's going on in John's head while he's in prison? What kind of like thought process do you think John had, or just what do you think might have been going on in his head?
Yeah. So whatever ideas I have about what's like going on in the character's head, eventually you're on the day, they call it, when you're shooting, you're faced with the thoughts you end up having. And for me, I try to listen to those. And there was I don't believe that he was surprised that this was happening. Like he was in prison, probably under the knowledge that this could happen any day. He's not. I don't think he's naive. He's impulsive. He's not naive.
Yeah.
It's just, and he also has embraced, I think, his death. To the same extent that he embraces life. It's not that he yearns for death. In my opinion.
Yeah.
But that if he does have death, that if he does die, that is something that he wholeheartedly accepts as being part of his purpose, in the same extent of the purpose that he has being born.
Yeah.
And that is something. I don't want to spoil the episode for people, because it is beautiful how you end up seeing that. Like the Dallas and Ryan and Tyler have done an amazing job, like writing that scene, and I was very touched by it on the page, reading it on the page. And I mean, I don't think any of us can really imagine what it would be like being walked to your death until you're there. And I think sometimes we're in situations that we end up having idiosyncratic thoughts, and I think often when we're in a situation, we're like, oh, I had no idea it would be like this. And so it's kind of a revelation for it. And there's a sadness and pride and joy in it. So I think there's a cocktail of different things happening that I kind of allowed to unfold rather than like premeditated. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's really,
but that's,
yeah.
Generally it's the process. You just kind of depend on the work you've done kind of before, and kind of just letting yourself surf the story that is written, and just doing justice to that, and having, the director, Dallas, tell you when it needs to be of a slightly different flavor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think also it gives him options in the room to cut it. So that's the thing in on stage, it's your performance. On film, you have a performance that you're about 40 to 50% in charge of, and then it comes down to the director and editor and how they cut it and how the music plays into it. It's very much like it's no single person is responsible for the performance. It's a collaborative effort, even though it looks like it's just me. That they cut at this moment, right, rather than keep it lingered on for a little longer when I got bad. You know what I mean? They're cutting all the bad stuff away, so I depend on them. And but it was a beautiful scene to shoot, and it was quite intense. It was quite intense.
what do you hope that people will kind of take away from your performance of John, just in general, or season 4? You can choose. I know with season 4 ahead, maybe you can't share too much about that, but just what do you hope people will take away from your performance of John?
I try to do the best I can, but I also know that when a person takes in a piece of art or a performance or a thing, it's very much like now theirs. It exists in their heart, and like they might like it, they might not like it. It's kind of none of my business.
Yeah.
I obviously hope they like it and hope that they resonate with something in it. But I think like all things, like like the show, like the Bible, you find the verse that speaks to you. And I know that there's some disciples, for example, that really speak to some viewers. They're like, oh, this is exactly my plight, and that's kind of the beauty of how the show is done, is that you find the thing that connects with you. So I hope that there's something in what I've done and in how it's been written that people resonate with. That's the most thing I can want as a creative. But what that resonation is entirely their own private world, and I like respect it, and I hope that it's I hope that it's a beautiful experience. And if not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe for yourself, is there anything? What have you kind of most resonated with, or what have you found most appealing or interesting about the role, kind of looking back on your entire time doing it?
I think he has a lot of like kind of contradictions, right? He's extremely like fervent about what is right and wrong in the Bible, and yet has this enormous capacity for humor and like and joy, and like I like those two extremes. I like how he can kind of like flip on it. Also, like I think also when we get these ideas of these biblical figures, especially a guy that like that eats crickets and lives up in the you get these preconceived notions about how he should be, and I wanted it not to feel like it's living into a preconceived notion or living into how other people portrayed it in the past. Where it starts from an idea. It was and I say this a lot, but it is like trusting the script will, once you read the words, immediately you start to get affected and feeling the character, and I think there's a tenderness to John, but also like a kind of a fiery spirit, so a fiery tenderness. So I think that's what it was, these contradictions, these polarities, that I was like, oh, this is an interesting character. He's not just the one thing. He is this and the opposite. And that's what I love the most.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of encapsulates a lot of what's made The Chosen unique among, there's tons of Bible movies, tons of depictions of Jesus and even John the Baptist, but that's how the show has allowed those contradictions or those kind of tensions of like, humor, but also seriousness and purpose, vulnerability, but also kind of confidence and faith. That's something that I've really enjoyed about your character and about the show more generally. So,
yeah. It has this lovely levity to it.
Yeah.
Too. That it breaks up. It makes it all just a kind of symphonic. It's not this singular note that's just being kind of hammered. So they've
sometimes, like Bible movies, it can just kind of feel like a hagiography where we're just kind of looking up on a pedestal towards characters, and we don't really get to kind of feel their humanity and what it would have been like to most people are not just totally focused and serious the entire time. They've got, like you said, levity and other things. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's very much like a an approach to life that is buried in The Chosen that is biblically inspired, but also like has this soft view of it, like in that um it's not like militantly like fixed to the words. It has a wise approach to it where it's like contemplation. Yes, some things are very strong, but sometimes it must be soft. And you look at, Jesus, it's like he has these so many colors to him. And yeah, so I really I love the voice of the show. I think it's really cool, and it's also like very kind of modern as well.
Yeah.
It's speaking to a specific audience. The score kind of speaks a lot to it, so it's an interesting take. I like also how unabashedly Dallas has like made it his own. He's
Yeah.
like, this is like my take, my show. Like, and you can everyone. There will be another one that can be equally like equally
valid or
another interpretation that equally valid. Yeah, but this is mine, and hope you get to enjoy it. And a lot of us are like, yeah, this is great. This is a lovely view.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that so we've kind of hinted at, like, there might be some difficult days ahead for John. Is there anything else kind of coming up in the next season? I know, again, you can't get into specifics, but anything else that you think we should look forward to, or it could even just be like themes or things that about the upcoming season that you think are exciting, or
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely building. You feel this building. You feel this growth. You feel this impending sense of something around the corner. It's darker than it's ever been in terms of the emotional weight, and yet characters are transforming. They are growing, and I really like seeing the growth of the disciples. Personally, I think that's just really, it's such an interesting touch. I mean, it is partly the whole concept of the show from the beginning, to see how the disciples will perceive the coming of Jesus. But just how that plays out is quite inspiring. And there's a lot of inspiration in this show that I think the disciples' journey for me is most captures.
No.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Just I've hearing from you and having heard from a couple others, it sounds like the upcoming season's really going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to just a few days.
It's going to be intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The we saw it in the test screening at the premiere, and wow, it was like people were so responsive to it. It was so that you could tell that they were also watching it on more than just the surface level. There was the surface level, and then also they're watching it through how they've perceived and taken in the Bible. And so you're seeing two different things happening at once. It's so fascinating. So I think it's not just what you're watching on screen, but it's also what you bring to it. If you're Christian, or if you read the Bible, it's what you bring to it is also a part of the show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everyone has their own unique experience because they all have their own unique relationship to the Bible and to Scripture. So yeah, that's always so fascinating to me. Like, as an artist, everything that's on screen, everyone is bringing themselves to, but they're bringing themselves to with this content, with this attachment to the Bible. So it's it was an amazing experience,
Mm,
and I'm excited for everyone watching here to see it, because yeah, it's going to be wild.
mm. Well, before we close out, I'm curious, are there any other kind of projects you're working on, whether it's film or TV or other stuff that you'd like to share? Or
Yeah, well, I'm working on a couple of projects. One of them is a Jewish horror film,
huh.
which I don't want to say too much about that, but it basically is a contained kind of thriller within an Orthodox Jewish family. Um, that I'm excited about. And the other thing is, I can't say too much about it right now, but it is kind of like slightly biblically inspired, and it's a comedy.
Ooh,
And I'll be posting something about it in the coming months on my socials, on my Instagram, um, David Amito,
mm,
and hopefully, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully it'll be good. I'm pretty excited about it, and I have a little team together where we're trying to put this up. But this is a self finance thing, and this is in addition to like all the other just more professional things that have going on. But this is the things that I'm like excited about because it's the passion project.
yeah. Well,
So yeah, hopefully.
yeah. Down the road, if you want to talk about that, I'd love to be able to share it with people. Yeah, because I love
Oh yeah,
seeing
right
different
on.
kind of approaches to biblical stories and stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's loosely inspired on a biblical story, and it's an Old Testament
Okay,
story. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, it should be interesting.
cool.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, David, for being here. I really was interested. You brought some real insights into kind of the mindset of John and how you've um, developed the character and kind of the whole process that went into it. So I really enjoyed hearing from you, and I'm sure that a lot of people have as well. And I'm sure that we're all really excited to see your performance and kind of the really important moments for John that are coming up in the new season of The Chosen. So thanks again,
Yeah.
David.
Right on.
Yeah, and
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a pleasure. This
yeah,
has been really, really great. Thank you, Kevin.
thank you. Well, thank you all for listening also. This is the Bible Artist Podcast. Godspeed.